And now, the Android Basics segment. This is a segment where we discuss the things that power your device from behind the scenes. And now, here's this week's episode, Android Basics. We now turn our attention to our One UI discovery or exploration as we go through the system settings of the Samsung One UI. Today we come to the general management, and because it's a large area, we're going to be breaking this into 2 or 3 parts depending on what we find in here. John, though, will be giving us a preamble, and this time we're looking at the language area. John?
Welcome back to our series on Samsung's One UI. In this installment, we will continue our way through the settings. We are on the general management settings, and because there is a lot to cover in this area, we will just be focusing on the language portion today. I'm in the main settings now, and what we are looking for is
General Management, Language and Keyboard, Date and Time.
So I'm going into this section.
General Management. Navigate up. Button. Search Settings. Button.
We have search at the top as always.
Language. English, United States.
But the first option is our language.
Language. Navigate up. Button.
And in here,
The language at the top of the list will be used by default. If an app doesn't support your default language, the next language in the list will be used instead.
and I have
Selected. English, United States.
English, and that's all.
Add language. Button.
And below your list of languages is where you can go to add another language. Backing out of here,
General Management. Language. English, United States. App Languages. Choose the language you want to use for each app.
pretty self-explanatory.
App Languages. Navigate up. Button.
This just takes you to a list of all of your apps, and
Docs, System Default.
I'm just going to open Docs.
App Languages. Navigate up. Button.
And I have set,
Checked. System Default.
which obviously is going to be your default, but if you want it to use a specific language, you would
English, United States.
select the specific language.
Spanish, United States. All languages.
And then below here is a list of all the languages you could choose from. Backing out.
App Languages. Docs, System Default.
Now, this is not every app on your phone that you can do this with because developers have to opt into it, but hopefully the app you want to use will be in here. Backing out again.
General Management. App Languages. Choose the language you want to use for each app. Language Packs. Manage downloadable language packs used for voice input, text-to-speech output, and translation.
Going in here.
Language Packs. Navigate up. Button. Language packs are used to provide voice input, text-to-speech output, and translation features in Samsung apps. These include Samsung Keyboard, Samsung Internet, Live Translate, Text Call, and more.
So here is where you would go to download your language pack if you want these features to be available in your language. The selection is a little bit limited. There's probably between 15 and 20 languages. But if this supports your language, this is where you would go to select it or download it. And that was all of the settings related to languages. So we will continue the general management portion of One UI settings in the next installment, but for now, I'm sending it back to the crew for further discussion.
So that's the preamble to the language here. We got 3 items here. The first item, of course, is that language. So when one is setting up your phone for the first time, you have that language that comes up. You choose a language. Those of us, if you're blind, of course, we know that when you turn on the phone and you enable accessibility, and then you find that thing in there that talks about language, this is where you go to choose that language. Now, it depends on the region you are in. Sometimes some areas don't have their languages. We have so many languages around the world. And, in a utopian world, one would expect that every single language will be in there, but that's virtually impossible because some dialects are not even there at all because it all depends on who's doing these things and whether or not they have someone in that part of the world that is part of the language development. What happens here is that if you select a language, that becomes your default. And as John shows us, once you go in here, you could add another language. And adding another language will be like a secondary language, or you could choose to make that your default if it's there. The major languages are here.
Does Salah or Kareen want to talk about how TalkBack can no longer let you switch languages at startup or first run?
Since TalkBack doesn't let you choose a language from the granularity, I discovered something with a Samsung device. After some attempts contacting Samsung, I can say that there are more offline voices coming with One UI 6.1. You could see that in TTS data. There are over 20 languages I can see right now. And those voice data are downloaded, which is great.
But the problem is that the language selection is still not there. It is in the main menu, but not in the granularity. At least when I did the setup of my 6.1 A55, it wasn't there, but it started with English because the SIM was not inserted.
Yeah, but so if it starts with the English language, can you choose your own language? Because if you tap on the default language, it displays a list of languages. Does it have Arabic as one of the languages you can choose from?
Yeah, but I will lose speech because you know that Arabic is not a Latin language, so it will not be able, the TTS, the English voice will not be able to read.
Oh.
So I will lose speech.
Yeah, so what that means is that if you tap on a language that is not on there by default because it has to be downloaded and you are not yet on the internet, if you do that, then you'll be dead in water. So I see where that is coming from. So as Kareen and Sally are trying to say, these are languages that if you set up a device in your own language, for example, say I'm starting up my phone for the first time, and if the language is not there, like John says, there are like maybe 15 languages or whatever, that doesn't mean that we don't have maybe 40, 50 or whatever languages in there. We have those languages, but the truth is, the problem is that we don't have TTS support at that point until one is on the internet. And so this is some area that we need to be very careful about. If you're setting up a device for the first time and if you're blind, you want to make sure that your language is truly supported, that it does come on device as one of the defaults. If it isn't in there in that region, then it's best to use some other language that you understand. Just have the basic settings of setting up the device. And once you're connected to the internet, of course, you can go download your own language pack. And then that takes us, though, to the second item in this area, which, John, you talked about, the app language support. And this area talks about apps that you could use in your language. For example, say I'm running my device in English, but if I want a particular app to use Spanish, for example, I haven't tried it because I don't understand Espanol. John, have you tried to maybe change your Gmail to Espanol or change your Gmail to French, for example, and see what it would sound like in that app language support?
No, like you, I'm not multilingual, but have you used these settings before, Salah or Kareen?
Kareen.
Yeah, the app language is important, despite the fact that it's not supported by many apps. Well, the feature needs Android 13. and above. So you can't use it before Android 13. However, many apps are not supported, but the main advantage of this for multilingual users like me, well, if you are, for example, working on translating an app to your language, instead of changing the system language, you can just change the app language if the app supports this. Also, if you need to work with an app in your own language for any reason, you can just do it using the app language. So I hope that more developers are going to support this, because it's really a convenient solution. Instead of just changing the language of the UI completely, it will be nice if more developers just support this.
I see that's a very good feature because, like you indicated, I don't have to change my system language. So, for example, if I have an app that I kind of prefer using it in a different language, even though my main system language is English or Spanish, for example, but I want to have that particular app in a different language, it's a great idea. And so, as you indicated, Karen, this is an API thing that developers can take advantage of. And hence the reason why, if you go in this area, you're probably going to see a handful of apps. If you have a bunch of apps like John and I do, you may see some of them, a lot of them are in there. I think in my apps of about 400 some, probably I have about 100 something apps that could be switched to other languages. The rest of the 200 plus don't have that feature. And that's because the developer, of course, didn't pay any attention to implement that, take advantage of that API to make their app be one that could be switched from one language to another. And it's very important to have that, because if you look at the people around the world, a lot of people around the world speak other languages. And so it makes sense to have this. So if you're a developer and you are hearing us, please add them languages in there so that people can choose what they want to use. Let's move on to the third one. And we're talking about language packs. And Karen, what do you have to say about this?
Regarding iPhones, language packs section is not in the iPhones, because it is related to on-device stuff like translation, speech recognition, and things. So we who are not having the AI stuff from Samsung don't have the thing related to language packs. You will not see it on your phone. It's not in the settings at all until this moment.
So that's kind of a little sad, though, that if one has an A series, one does not have this feature. I didn't know that. So, but one would think that this area is very important, because we're talking about things that have to do with translations and things like that, or maybe other voice related things. And why would they choose not to give the A series these features? Or
Well,
it just doesn't make sense.
This is all on-device stuff. So, I mean, you can use some translation features, obviously, like Google Translate. But like, if the newer features, like when you're on a phone call and your phone is translating what the other person is saying to you in real time using your phone's processor locally, this is the type of thing that you would need to have these languages downloaded from this section in order to take advantage of that. So I guess, hardware requirements, you need a certain amount of memory, you need certain processors to be able to do this type of AI, for lack of a better word, stuff on your phone.
Yeah, so I guess because of some of the limitations, as you indicated, John, it makes this maybe virtually impossible for one to have take advantage of that. For those of us that have the capability, or our devices that have that capabilities, one could add other languages in there. So I guess part of it also, it means that, hey, the manufacturers want you to spend more money, get a so-called better phone, even though, in my never to be humble opinion, I would like to believe that the A series are more than capable of doing some of these things, and holding it back from them, I don't know. Kind of little
Yeah,
bit.
you never know. This is what we're told by Samsung, is that it doesn't the hardware can't support it, but they might just be trying to sell phones.
Yeah, I would like to think so too.
Because Google tried something like this recently. Remember, they said Gemini Nano was only going to be available on the Pixel 8 Pro because of hardware limitations on the Pixel 8. But now that the Pixel 8a is out in June, supposedly you're going to be able to take advantage of Gemini Nano on both the Pixel 8 and Pixel 8a, as well as the Pixel 8 Pro.
That's a very valid point because, like you indicated, these things were only supposed to be on the high end, and now we're seeing it being trickled into the other ones. Look back on the Pixel 6 series, for example, like the guided frames that we had, especially the one, the back camera, that when the Pixel 8 came out, it was only for the Pixel 8, and then now it's available either on the Pixel 6 series or Pixel 7. So some of these things, frankly, I don't know, God forgive me, but I think that the companies are just trying to make us buy new phones because they don't want to, push out things that are available. They know technically, because in reality, it's just software. Let's be honest with each other. But then they just don't want to making us buying another one because they want to make more money. So I see where they're coming from. But when they do things like what Google has done, then it kind of falsify what they said earlier on. But I'm all for it. If it can be pushed out, let it get pushed out to the lower phones.
I have a comment related to this. Well, Samsung, for example, included the Arabic DTS, or the Arabic voice, which was added recently. It included this in the Arabic pack. So I don't know why they just added Alex like other voices. For Arabic friends, well, a friend was able to give me the APK, and I just took took it on myself to just share this, and it was shared in an Arabic, a big Arabic channel. Other people, Arabic voice, justifiable just in the language pack that will not be itself can be used on other phones. So I think this also adds to the point that you are trying to say. Yeah, sometimes they just put things in a certain pack, not because we aren't able to use them, just because they don't want us to use them. They want us to wait.
Yeah, and when we wait, of course, we finally get frustrated. Okay, hey, this feature sounds so cool. I'm gonna get a new phone, and so of course you go out, buy a new phone when your phone is fully capable of taking advantage of what's available. And it's just so sad they do these things. But of course, what can we say? It's one of the things that they do. You've got to keep the cash flow, and so it makes sense from their viewpoint, but from the viewpoint of the user, most especially if you have other commitments, you need money for something else, and being forced to go get something that for example, that your phone is fully capable of, but then you're not getting it because they want you to buy a new one. And then later on, then they bring it on, and meanwhile, you've already gone out and purchased that other phone. So I hope, though, that the the longer support like we have, let's say for Samsung devices or Google devices, they will now maybe consider pushing out some of these features into these phones, because they're just software, like we say. Google has these feature drops, that we call feature drops, and some of these things have trickled down to even the older phones. So my hope is that we'll see some of these things get trickled down to some of these other phones.